Yeah, it's recording now.
I think Jasmina is also waiting, she says. And Arvindaji, Shweta is also waiting.
Just a second, please. There is some issue with the Facebook. Just a second. Let me just correct it.
You sit there. Yeah, tell them to keep it mute.
So, today again, Facebook is misbehaving. Okay.
Arvindaji, aap rehne do, if it doesn't come on, you just let in the people and we can begin.
Okay.
Hi, Preeti.
Hi.
Do you have Nazi here?
Yes.
Nazi?
Nazi is waiting and Jasmina.
Okay. We can start.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute. I'll just come back. बंद कर दूं? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Majha House in its virtual avatar. This time of physical distancing and staying indoors, locked down or locked up, it's actually opened a lot of new avenues for us and brought us a lot of new audiences as well. But it's also meant that we can't sit together at the end of the session with a cup of hot coffee and some lovely freshly baked cake in Amritsar and talk to each other after we finished the session. You know, this used to be one of the most wonderful things when one could actually interact with the guest of the evening and continue the conversations that had started off earlier during the session. And it always, for me, was wonderful to interact with all the audience that had come to Majha House. And I really, really seem to miss that terribly. However, let's get on now because I think we're already a little bit late. And I'd like to welcome all of you, and I would especially like to welcome our guest this evening, Anand Neelakantan, as well as our conversationalist who's going to talk to him about his book and his writing career and all the other stuff that Anand has been doing. And Amitabh is going to talk to him about that. Anand Neelakantan is a really well-known best-selling author. He's written a number of books. Hello? He's written a number of books, and his best-selling Asura, The Tale of the Vanquished, is also, it's all based on a mythology. Most of his, these recent books at least, are all placed in ancient India. The one that we are going to talk about today, Chaturanga, is fantasy fiction, and it's set in the fictional kingdom of Mahishmathi in ancient India. He's going to tell us about it. He will also tell us about this name, Chaturanga, which I believe is something, a game that used to be played in ancient times and something like chess. This is a fantastic story. It's fast moving, very, very, like a page turner, fast paced. And it seems to me larger than life because it sort of embraces all these emotions, human emotions, but shows them to you in a much, much, larger way. And there is a lot of the visual aspect of his writing is there to see, because you can actually feel what these characters are going through. You can see what is happening. It's almost like creating the scene in front of you. So, and in this also there are multiple characters, there are multiple kingdoms, there's a story that spans generations, and it has shrewd politicians and power-hungry chieftains and tribal rebels. Maybe we can also see a bit of our own present-day history in some of the things that he has written. This is also part of his Bahubali series, and I think all three are probably the official prequel. I think all three of them make up the official prequel to the Bahubali films that I think a lot of people have seen and enjoyed. There's also a Netflix series on the cards, and that will also come up soon. And to tell you a little bit about the person who's going to be talking to him today, we have Amitabh Pandey, who's also an author who's written the very successful Himalayan series, which is placed in the high Himalayas, about a detective, about this entire setting of a drugs cartel and how this detective goes about bursting the cartel. And it's again a very, very thrilling read, and again very fast paced and all. And I thought these two in conversation today for us would be quite something. So let me hand it over to Amitabh, and let's all look forward to a wonderful evening of thrills and chills.
Thank you, Preeti. Hi, Anand and everybody else. Welcome to this evening's session of House. Yes, Preeti, we all miss the lovely setting of your house, Majha House in Amritsar. But then these are bad times in that sense. We can't meet. So we have to do it this way. Okay, let us begin. Anand, correct me if I make a mistake here. The book that that has sort of inspired this evening is this book, which I am showing to everybody. It's called Chaturanga. It is the second book in a three-book series, which is a prequel to the famous film Bahubali. Now, very quickly, because you're supposed to be talking here, not me, In 2015, Bahubali was released. It was a huge hit, huge budget, huge revenues, huge hit everywhere on earth. And then has come up this notion of a prequel to Bahubali. Now, I want to start with this, Anand. If you will tell us the story of this notion of prequel and how it came to you, how you went about it. Because as a fiction, as a piece of fiction, you don't want to talk too much about this book which has just been released because you want people to buy the book and read it. You can't give the plot away, you can't give the storyline away. So tell us the story of this prequel and how you went about it. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Amitabh, and thank you, Preeti and Majha House for having me here. It's a pleasure. I wish I visited Amritsar many times. I wish next time when I come, I can come and have a visit. Amritsar always is about the Golden Temple, so I go there and come back. That's all. And Jallianwala Bagh, of course. Answering Amitabh the question, it came to me because Rajamouli had read my. It came to me because.
Please mute everybody else except the speaker. Thank you.
It came to me because Rajamouli, the director of the film, he had read my Asura and my Ajaya series. So what happened is it is actually a funny story in the sense that I had at that time, I'm talking about 2016, I had at that time 3 books, Asura, Ravan's Ramayan, Ajaya series, which consists of 2 books, Roll of the Dice and Rise of Kali, which is Duryodhan's Mahabharat. Then I had done some hit serials in television. For example, in Star TV, I was scripting Siya Ke Ram, and in Colors, I was scripting Chakravarti Ashoka. And in Sony, I was doing Mahabali Hanuman. So all these things were happening around. We had a college get-together. I don't belong to the, at least I didn't belong to the world of literature. I am an engineer and a petroleum manager and all those things by training. So we were having our 19th college reunion at that time. And what happened was during the party, I kept boasting to my friends that they were asking now what. So with friends, you can tell anything. So I kept boasting saying that next what? Next Bahubali, Rajamouli will call, Maniratnam will call, Rakesh Prakash Mehra will call, Sanjay Leela Bhansali will call, James Cameron will call. There is no tax for dreaming. No, so I was telling whatever nonsense came to my mind. I came back home. I came back to Mumbai. And that day when I was, this happened on a Friday. So I came back. On Sunday, I was writing and a phone came. So I keep my phone aside while I am writing. So my wife came with the phone and said, one Mr. Rajamouli is online. I said, it is somebody playing around. It is one of my friends who is playing a prank. Because I had boasted, they are pulling my legs. So I said, I don't want to talk now. I'm writing. Tell him I'm busy. I'm not going to talk. Again, the phone rang. This time some secretary was there. And she came back again. I said, this is definitely, if not my friends, this is definitely some radio station or something. After that, they will say, Bakari Banaya and give you some coffee hamper or something like that. At least I'll get a coffee hamper. So I took the phone. So he said, I am Rajamouli. I don't know whether you have watched my film. The first film had come. I liked your book. So I would like to meet you. So I am just thinking which of my classmate or which of the RJ is calling. So I'm very guarded. I said, okay, I will see. Okay, Rajamouli, bye. I kept the phone. Then wife said, what if it was really Rajamouli? I said, nonsense. I am talking nonsense and you are also telling it is most probably 5 minutes you'll receive a call. Then I got an email. I keep the net also off. She came back saying that an email has come and it is from Rajamouli's office. He said that it was a pleasure talking to you. So in case you feel like meeting me, in case you feel like talking to me, you call at your convenience. For 2-3 minutes, I couldn't believe what was happening. Then I immediately called him up in the number and said that, sir, can I come now? I'll catch the next flight to Hyderabad and I'll reach now in the evening itself. He said, no, don't come now. He would have thought I'm a crack or something. No, 5 minutes before I was all throwing my hair and saying, okay, let me see. And suddenly, then I told him, this is what happened. I'm extremely sorry. So he was laughing. He said, don't mind. Even I will get shocked if somebody calls like that without warning. I should have returned to you, sir. You come over. So next week I went there. And the most frightening thing happened. He told about a lot of things. He asked me what is the problem with Bahubali film. So I blurted out whatever I felt like. Then he laughed. Other people were also there. Then he said, would you mind writing a prequel to it? Just like how you had written this. I said, of course I can write. Then he said, let me check. I said, check what? I was a published author. I had 3 bestsellers. All the 3 were in the crossword popular award list and all those things. Translated to 13, 14 languages. 3 hit serials were going on. And I didn't have the courage to say, what are you trying to test me? I know writing. If you don't like my writing, why do you call you? But I cannot tell it out. I said, okay, sir, whatever. Then he asked me to write some 20 scenes. And he gave me an hour. In an hour, I had to craft 20 scenes. He said nothing from the film should be there, but it should be in this universe. So I crafted some random scenes and I gave it. His secretary took the printout. He had gone out for something. He came back. He read it. He sat before me. So it reminded me of my engineering college Viva. At least there some friends would have helped you some way or other. Here I had to do it all alone. And I was sitting, he started putting mark 2 out of 10. So I started packing my bag. 3 out of 10, 2.5 out of 10, the various scenes. And as it went on, suddenly he started putting 8 out of 10. A smile is coming, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So finally I had passed. It was quite unlike my engineering result where I had a lot of supplies, a lot of back papers. When I passed out, I took 1 more year. So it was better than that. Then he said, can you write? I said, yeah, if you give a chance, I'll definitely write a prequel. So which character you want? I said, I'll be taking, before I could say, he said, don't choose Vijjala Deva and Ballala Deva, the villains, because you have the tendency to write it from the villain side. You are written from Duryodhana's side and you are written Ramayana from Ravan's side. So I don't want that. Other than that, you can choose the character. So I said the most fascinating character is Shivagami, because she is the woman who is capable of saving Bahubali and also killing Bahubali. So what could be a better character? And then the other character could be a contrast to this is Kattappa, who is again another character like that, who loves him, yet he is the one who kills him. So he said, okay, then you can write. When can you give? I said, in 2 years. So that is the time you take for a novel. Then the entire room, everybody burst out laughter. He said, you have 100 days. In 100 days, you have to create it. If you can do it in 100 days, I have not even written a short story in 100 days. Because writers generally are lazy. The last thing a writer wants to do is to write. Yeah, Amitabh sir will agree with me.
Very, very good point. Very good point.
You sit at the table, you do every other thing. You check the mail, you check the WhatsApp, you decide you learn about writing, you read something else. The last thing you will be doing will be the writing. To do it in 100 days was crazy. And then he put the next bomb that it might become at that time, which platform it was not, I was not aware, it will become a web series. So that is a plan. And the writing has to be visual. You need web series means a film is around 2.5 hours. 2 films is 5 hours. A web series is like you need a content for 50 hours, 60 hours. So what you are looking at is almost 1,000 pages or 1,200 pages of content. At least if it wants to run for 3 or 4 seasons, 10 episodes each. That is like momentous work. So we decided to divide it into 3. But even giving the first book, because the second film was coming, so the only incentive he threw me was, he told me why Kattappa killed Bahubali. So that was $1 billion worth answer. So that is something which motivated me. I was one of the few people in the country or in the world who knew why Kattappa killed Bahubali at that time. Now everybody knows. So in 100 days I had to craft. I had to create around 30 to 40 characters. And uh, create an intricate story which will not only, which has to be fast paced, yet you need to have characters in that who have depth in them. So it was a tough task. Whatever to the best of my capability, I have done it. Second book, I took some time because in between I went back to write my next book, Vanara, and then there was other series which I did in Netflix and other parts. And secondly, we were scripting the episodes of the first season. So there is some variation from the book. So that also was being looked around. Then I finished this, and the third book also is ready. Maybe by December, January, it should be out, and the series will end.
Okay. I mean, you said some very interesting stuff. I have a question. You started by writing your own thing, saying your own, saying the stories that you wanted to say. And here was a situation where you are told, no, these are the characters. Now write a story. What was the difference? Did you feel constrained?
Sir, I
Were
was,
there any challenges?
I was well trained in that, in the sense I had already started writing for television. So the good thing and the bad thing about writing for television is you learn to write on deadline. You learn to write according to the TRP, and everyone in the writing room in the television, including the boy who comes to serve you tea, will have an opinion on how you should write the story.
Yes, exactly.
So by that time, I had written almost I had written almost 200 episodes. Now I would have written more than 500 hours of television. I have written more script than this. So that was a good training. So you always write as per the what do you call, the director's vision, the channel's vision, the producer's vision. So it's a collaborative art. There are other things which I do for myself. Those are my novels.
Yeah.
I have now, including the book which is coming out this month, the children's book, the Asura Tales, which is coming out this month. Totally, I have 8 books, 7 in English and 1 in Malayalam. All those, except these 2 Bahubali series, the 6 are the ones which I created. But all the 500 hours of television which I created, I have created for others. Television, Netflix, and even the film which I am writing now, it is created for others. I had to cater to the taste of the director, the audience, the producer, and so many things. So you learn to write in constraints.
No, this is a remarkable point. I want to just dwell on it for a minute. You see, an author talks of himself normally as a free spirit. I've got an idea, I want to express the idea. But you're talking like a disciplined functionary who says, okay, I have my creativity, but if you give me a constraint, I will work within that constraint. That's quite something in my view. I mean, don't you feel that it's a difference, and a difference that is a challenge that you have managed to sort of overcome? Because a lot of people would say, forget it, I have my own ideas.
Sir, what I would say, any art needs constraints. Without constraint, there is no art. Without constraint, there is no sports. Sports have rule, arts have rule. Sports have timing, movies have timing, literature also should have the constraints. Art blooms in constraint. If there is no constraint, there has to be a border. Even when you are painting something, there is a border for the canvas. You cannot paint everywhere, wherever you want. Everything has to be put in that border. I see even writing like that. So writing has been made to look as if it is something mystical. I don't think it is a mystical process. I don't think any art has a mystical process. Art is like any other, as artists, as writers, we love to ascribe a sort of mysticism to it. But when you look it apart, look it from far away, it is like any other job, sorry to say. You are passionate about it. So many people are passionate about their jobs. A doctor is as creative as a writer, or he has to be. There are non-creative doctors, just like there are non-creative writers also. But creativity is not something which is restricted to a writer alone. Say, take the case of an actor. How does the actor express his art? He expresses it through all the constraints, right? And what has films or the visual media done to it is to bring all these constraints and yet bring it out, bring the art out of it. Imagine a classical singer who has trained a lot. He will take an entire 3 hours or 4 hours to express himself, which is a great thing, which is a fantastic thing. Imagine the same person is called to sing in a film. He will get 3 minutes, 4 minutes to sing and show it. They are not lesser artists. It needs that constraints gives a better adaptability, and it is same for everything. If you are a cricketer, you cannot say I will play only test. Test is the real cricket. You will have to play one day match, you will have to play T20 and most probably T10 also. So I believe that is not a problem at all. It all depends on how you define yourself. If you say I am a mystic, I get my art by telepathy from somewhere, then that is the constraint for you. If I think that, okay, this is what is required, and I will try to create with this constraint, I have to craft a scene which has to be told in 2 minutes. This is the budget of the producer. This is the constraint that an actor can show. This is the budget for VFX. This is the budget for stunt. How will you create a fantastic scene in 3 minutes? There lies the art. That also is an art. So I try to do all these things, no? And I have found the more constrained the art is, the better the pay is. Films pay well, the television pay well. No, I am telling it openly.
No, good point. It's a very good point. No, in fact, I am very struck by the one parallel that you made just now, which was of a classical musician. The laws of classical music are very clear. This swar komal, this swar tir, blah, blah, blah. Everything is given. And within that, you show your creativity. That is very serious creativity. So you made a very good point. Thank you. I had this thing in my mind ever since Preeti asked me to do this. And I said, how will an author say, yaar, somebody tells me, ye bana, kya bana? I am an independent free spirit. And you've given the answer. Thank you very much for this. Now, let us move forward. As I said, and I hope you'll agree with me, that we shouldn't talk too much about Chaturanga. People have to buy the book and read it. You can't tell them the story just now. It is, as you already said, it is one part of the story of this one woman with whom Bahubali starts, right? Going back to her life, how she came up and so forth. We won't tell them more. It is one aspect of her life and the setting in which the story is told. Now, I want to go back to your story. You see, you are an engineering graduate. The normal Indian concept is, acha, doctor, engineer, find a good job, go to America, work in Silicon Valley, you are fine. How does an engineer write A, fiction, and B, why does he choose mythology as a basis for his fiction and then reverse the whole game? The loser becomes the main protagonist and the story from his side. Now, you did this sort of turning things on their head very, very successfully. So tell me that story. First, why writing? Why fiction?
First thing, I was not an engineer by choice. Like most kids who did their engineering in the 90s, that was the only option given to us. All were forced by most of the engineers in my age group in 45, 46, 40s, below 50s are forced engineers. A few of them have gone because of the passion. That's why the films like Three Idiot and all clicked a lot with this generation. So the only choice other than that was to become a doctor. And even though I write about very gory stories with a lot of wars and all, I am someone who faints if I see blood. So that was not a choice for me. And though I hated maths, and still I hate maths, even now my nightmares consist of my mother calling me up and saying that today is your maths exam, and I panicking. That's how I wake up in cold sweat, even at this age. But still I did engineering with a lot of difficulty, because that was the only way, that was the only middle class dream where you become an engineer, get a job, make a home, marry, have kids, have a car, and your life is set. The problem with me was I achieved all these things by the age of 30. Now what? You don't know what to do after that. Absolutely, you don't know what to do after that. Job is boring, and there is nothing to look forward other than the same usual. Your in Asura, I had put it through Ravan's mouth. The greatest tragedy that could happen to a man or a woman, but Ravan is telling, the greatest tragedy that could happen to a man is that he achieves all his dreams, and there is nothing to left to achieve. That means what? Your size of dream has shrunk and your life has shrunk. So I decided this should not be for me and I had to write. So I started with Malayalam because I was never comfortable with English. English I learned very late in life. So I started with Malayalam, and I used to draw a lot. So I used to, in college, I might fail in engineering, but I was always first in cartooning and this kind of art. So I used to draw caricatures. I used to get a lot of practice drawing the teachers, the professors and all in the class. And I had this false notion. Some of my friends had cheated me by saying that if you draw well, you can attract girl. But drawing the caricature of a girl is not a very easy way to attract anyone. That I learned much later. So then I started drawing cartoons again after 10-15 years at the age of 30 and all. And they got published. They got published by some of the very reputed magazines in Malayalam. The legendary cartoonist Toms, who had drawn for almost 65 years continuously. His magazine, he had given central space and all. He's no more now. But again, the cartoons were paying me something like 50 rupees, 100 rupees per cartoon. And I wanted to do something bigger. I started painting. After the initial few paintings, which I thrusted upon my family and friends, nobody was buying my painting. So I had this notion that if you are successful, you should be paid. You should be paid well.
Yes.
I didn't fall for this new age philosophy or old age philosophy that we do it for the sake of doing it. If you are good at something, people will have to pay you. That was a measure. It need not be always a measure, but at least how will I measure myself? Because people, you do a beautiful painting, people say it's good, but how will I compare it with someone? Well, I was influenced by Ravan. Ravan is a man of great ambition. And I believe one of my books which is coming out is Asura Marga, which says that without, if you are contented, your life, if you are contented in life, your progress is stopped. You are as good as dead. Discontentment is what drives a human being. Discontentment is what drives a society forward, a civilization forward. If the first human was contented, he would be still living in the trees or in the caves. It is the discontentment that drove the civilization. So I was discontented, not anything for specific, but generally I was discontented. Then I started writing in Malayalam short stories, satire, social commentaries. I started writing in the satire magazines, and my payment slightly increased from 50 rupees to 150 rupees. So it was at that time I thought after 10-12 stories were published, I thought this is not the way to go. I had to go to a bigger market. I had to go to a much larger. And what would I write? So at that time, the trend was Chetan Bhagat and others were doing very well. And romance and light romance, all those things were doing well. But I didn't want to follow the market because I didn't know much about that, to write about it. Then I went back to my childhood. I grew up in a place where Puranas are still a part of life. I was always fascinated and passionate about the folk narration and the contrarian narrations which are there in the villages of the country. In village, if you see, they tell the stories in a totally different way. I have followed many oral storytellers just for the heck of it with my recorder, and I have found that their stories change as per the audience. They take contemporary issues of that particular village, they link it to Ramayana or Mahabharata or any folk tale and tell the story, and they are getting 360-degree feedback. When they are telling it, they are looking at the audience, looking at their observation, and they are changing the story. So if you follow one folk artist, the way he tells it in one temple is not the same as what he is telling it in the next temple. So in my village alone, there was around more than 108 temples. So I used to roam around all these places and get this kind of what you call the storytelling. And I decided I have to write Ramayana. But what is the point of writing Ramayana in the conventional way? So many great writers have written it for thousands of years. I have to tell it something different. And Kerala is one place where this kind of contrarian theory, stories have a space in the traditional telling itself. Many of the classical arts have this kind of traditional telling. It's nothing new. Even in Sanskrit, Bhasa had attempted from the 2nd century BC itself through Uribanga and Pancharatra, where from Duryodhana's side or Karnabara. In Pancharatra, in Bhasa's Pancharatra, there is not even Mahabharata war. They sit together around a table and solve without the war. So this kind of thinking are there in Indian traditional storytelling. So I decided to use that, and then I wrote what I knew. And I started with Asura, then Ajaya. It gathered attention. Asura is now one among 100 books to be read in a lifetime as per Amazon list. And Asura and Ajaya took me to the field of television, field of films and all those things, to Bahubali and lecture series, so many other things. So I think it was about writing what I knew and using what all resources I got as well as possible. And the reason I wrote in English is because I know I read a lot of regional literature. I won't call them regional. These are all Indian classical languages. Many language I cannot read, but I can understand. So I use audiobooks to hear them. Whether it is Urdu, I cannot read, but I can hear Urdu stories. Marathi, I cannot read, but I can understand Marathi. So I hear it in Storytel or Audible. I cannot read Kannada, but I can understand Kannada. I cannot read Tamil, but I can understand Tamil. I cannot read Telugu, but I can understand Telugu. So I get stories from across the country, Hindi or whatever. Hindi I can read also, but I prefer hearing it through Storytel. So what happens, I found that so many great stories are there in Indian languages, but their translations are very bad. Yes. So I thought I should write only in English. Why give it to someone else? Because so many great Jnanpith awardees books also, when they get translated, they look very bad. So my decision to go into English was intentional so that it will reach more people. And I also did something opposite to my country cousin, the great Shashi Tharoor. I did an anti-Shashi Tharoor thing. Whatever English words which a 10th standard student cannot understand. 10th standard Indian student, I'm not talking about British student, I'm writing for Indians. From a village cannot understand. All those words I took out so that it can be easily read. Because I was not writing in my mother tongue. I was writing in a adopted language. English may be now an Indian language, Indian English, but it is not an Indian language per se. So I was not writing for the international audience where I will write dharma in italics and put a star and try to define what is dharma. Nobody, even Vyasa couldn't define what is dharma. But for Europeans, you need to define that. Yes. So if I am using Sanskrit words, if I am using Tamil words, if I am using Malayalam words, I won't even give an explanation to that. I expect my audience to understand it, at least through the context, because I am addressing Indians. If somebody else wants to read it, it is their choice. A Frenchman doesn't write a book thinking that Indians will read it. So why should we Indians write a book thinking that some European or a white man will read it? We are 135 crore people. That is enough for me. And the diaspora. And fortunately, my books are translated to Indonesian, and it is a subculture of India, or at least a brother culture of India. And there also, it is doing very well in Bahasa and other languages. So I believe when you are writing, you be true to your culture, true to your childhood, true to your roots, and the rest will follow. You tell the story the way Indians have been telling the stories. We have been the great storytelling tradition. From the Paishaji, a language which I used in this, book as a reference, the forgotten language of Aichaji, there was a book called Brihat Kada, which is the root of all stories. It is 10 times the size of Mahabharata, is what they say. 1/10 of Brihat Kada is Kadasarit Sagar. And
Yes.
from Kadasarit Sagar has come, Kadasarit Sagar has influenced tales, Arabian tales, and the folk tales of Europe, and across the world these have traveled around. So and Ramayana and Mahabharata has influenced across Asia. When we talk across Asia, we are talking about almost 70% of humanity. We think in a Eurocentric way, thinking that Europe is the center of the world. But all throughout history, Asia has been the center of the world, and majority of the people live in Asia. And it is our stories that have influenced the world more. So why should we imitate and try to write like how an American writer is writing? I have a dream. I have a dream that, and I am sure I will achieve it. If not me, someone else from India would achieve it. It is the Bahubali and other things are just a beginning. There will be a time, mark my words, within a decade, that Indian storytelling, Indian films will be dominating across the world. Lots of films are in the anvil in various Indian languages, which can rival any Hollywood film. And this is just a beginning. We are living in exciting times.
No, this is truly exciting. No, I am very, very struck by one point you made about.
Excuse me, I'm having some water.
Please, about the existence of a contrarian, of a culture that permits a contrarian point of view to the traditional, and you're catching on to it. Now, this is something I just want to spend a minute on. You see, all too often we are of the opinion or of the view that in a less than modern society, contrarian views are not allowed. Tradition is rigid. Things are fixed. But the point you're making here is very, very interesting, that in Kerala villages, you can say something different and not be criticized or hounded or, put aside for it. You can say, no, I will take an opposite point of view. And more importantly, what you said, this, if you can just for a minute elaborate on it, or at some other point, Preeti, do tell us when we are running out of time, okay? That there is actually a tradition of being contrarian. If I got you right, in the village storytellers, the wandering minstrels, so to speak, there is already a tradition of being contrarian, of telling contrary stories, of violating of going against the traditional accepted point of view. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yes and no. I will tell it like this. Sir, what is Indian tradition? There is a lot of different, Indian tradition is all about samvad. It is even, there are no commandments in Indian religion. Even when Krishna tells Gita, he is not saying, thou shall do this, thou shall do that. It is a debate between Arjuna and Krishna. And after telling everything, Krishna says, I have given you the greatest of knowledge. And you have to use your logic to accept what is acceptable and reject what you want to reject. He gives the freedom. Indian tradition has space for everything. India is not medieval Europe, or at least it was not. I don't know whether we are marching towards medieval Europe now, but traditional India always had Shankaracharya. When he traveled from Kerala across India, he didn't go for a crusade. He didn't carry an army with him. Only thing he had was his two langoti, which is there in his stick, the two loincloth he carried, one kamandalu, and the knowledge. He traveled across the country debating with people, telling contrarian views with whatever was there. He didn't go with an army to destroy or demolish the religious places. This is Indian tradition. What we think as Indian tradition now is the product of one, what evolved after the invasions in the medieval period and what evolved during the Victorian era. The morality we talk about now, saying that this is Indian culture, female should not go out and all those things, this rigidity came during British era. I'm not saying Indian society was perfect before that, but it was flexible. That means there was rigidity of caste and other things, but at least within the caste, there was some sort of flexibility. We ended up with the worst of all worlds after the British rule. So Indian tradition is essentially contrarian. Every book has a contrarian book to that. Even Mahabharata, it is said that Vyasa himself wrote 4 versions of Mahabharata, of which Jaimini Mahabharata is similar to what I had written from Duryodhana's point of view, in which we have got only Ashwatthama Parva. There are temples for Ravan, there are temples for Duryodhan, there are temples for Shakuni, there are temples for, you can imagine, whichever character. So these have coexisted. Like I have written in the foreword of Ajaya, I got the inspiration from it after visiting a temple in the South Kerala, in Koilon district, in the border of Koilon and Alapi district. It is called Malanada temple, Porivadi Malanada temple. The deity is Duryodhan, and it is not a small temple. Almost 10 lakh people come there every year, if there is no COVID, I am telling, normal times, every year to celebrate Duryodhan. So this is Indian tradition, and this is not a new temple or anything. This is not a new age fad. This is thousands of years. The legend is that it's the temple was there since Mahabharata times. There is temple for Hidumba. There is temple for Hidumbi. So Indian tradition is all about being contrarian. If there is an idea, there is of course an opposite idea equally valid in India.
No, I am very, very happy to hear this. And just let me underline one thing, since you mentioned Shankar. You know, in Vivek Chudamani, there is a verse which says, not by snan, not by dhyan, and not by standing on your head. I mean, that is my words. Not by doing all sorts of asanas is the ultimate to be found. You know, when I read Vivek Chudamani, I was horrified. I said, would this have been accepted in today's world? He was writing this in that world.
He also said, Udaranamitam Bahurda Vesham, for other people. For the sake of your stomach, you take on different kind of roles.
So I am very, very happy to hear this. I wish this should, debates like this, issues like this need to be on a public, large platform. Just this point, that it is a tradition which permitted contrarian points of view. The mind, as a history scholar put it, the society may have become constricted, but the mind was always free. It was not constrained by anything. That you think whatever you like, you don't disturb me, I don't disturb you. So I'm very, very happy to hear this absolutely, penetrating point that you've made. Now, I think we are running short of time. I can go on, and I'm sure so can you. But Preeti, can you come online, please? I have one more question, if you'll permit.
Yeah, I think you go ahead with your questions, and after that you can open up.
Okay.
After this question, yeah.
Okay. One last one. Well, actually, 2 quick ones. Anand, very quickly, I want to ask you how you work. Where do you sit? What time do you write? With what do you write? On what do you write? Just tell me the writer at work very quickly.
One, I wake up early in the morning, Brahma Muhurta, whatever you call,
Right.
4 o'clock.
Okay.
I finish my working by the time the rest of the world has woken up.
Excellent.
I write 2 to 3 hours a day, not more than that. Yeah. And that is enough for me. In the last 8 years, I had written 8 books, written 300 columns, 500 episodes, and 300 newspaper columns. You can produce that kind of work by working 3 hours a day.
Okay.
3 hours is my working time. I use technology and software a lot. When I am walking, I record my thoughts. I keep
All right.
I transcribe the thoughts using software. I use speech recognition, so I can achieve 3 times the speed than normal writing. The rest of the time, I read. I read a lot. I watch films and television a lot because that is
Yeah.
my bread and butter also. So I watch shows. I watch Netflix. I watch Amazon Prime. Generally, I do everything what my parents used to say that I should not whine away my time with. I'm having my revenge now. I watch a lot of TV. I read a lot of books, fictional books.
Yes, in fact, you've answered a question that I wanted to squeeze in, but now, last, because I know these people are getting restless now. I sensed a slight political message in this book because I just read this book. Give them religion. Your character at one point says, give them religion. That'll sort it out. That'll keep them fixed. Right? And then Shivagami's thoughts moved to how people were so easily fooled by gurus and men who claimed they were avatars of God, page 185. Then, I kept, when I read, I underline any book that I read, so nothing sells like nationalism and religion in our country. And you're talking about the fictional country that you've created, not our country. Offer prayers at all temples along the way, talk about her ancient culture and tradition, and so forth. Now, was this just, no, okay, you don't have to answer it, but let me ask it anyway. Was it a political comment or was it simply a comment for the polity that you have created in your imagination of this kingdom
Both
where
are
this
true. Both are true.
both are true? Okay, that answers my
Both are
question.
true in the sense, see, my Mahishmathi is contemporary India, my Lanka is contemporary India, my Kishkinda is contemporary India, my Hastinapura is contemporary India. Because you are writing in a particular period, it has to convey the mooring of that period, whichever
Right.
story world you set it in. So
Right.
yes,
Okay, good. That is,
the dharma,
I wanted to get
dharma
that
of the
question.
story is to tell the universal truths and tell it in an
Yes,
entertaining way.
yes. And can I, okay, we'll discuss this offline. I think I found an editing error at one place where when in they're talking about the sudden rise of this kingdom, and they say, why have the fields become suddenly so fertile? They've got the wrong name there, I think. Anyway, we'll talk about it offline. Thank
Yeah,
you very much. I mean,
should have been
you
sequential.
really made this 1 hour fly away. I mean, people are saying, "Yaar, aadha ghanta becomes so difficult to talk," but we've done an hour and we can talk much more if we want. Thank you very much. It was
Thank you
extreme.
for a great discussion. Thank you very much.
For me, it was very educative and entertaining. Now, Preeti, what do you want to do further?
I think there are some questions already in the chat box. Good Pratap, if you're here, will you please
Gee,
read
I'm
them
here.
out?
I think my video is on and my audio is also on.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Mr. Anand and Amitabh. That was a wonderful discussion. And I loved hearing both of you, and your answers were as remarkable as his questions were incisive. Thank you so much. This was quite a wonderful session. And the first question that came quite early in the talk was from Dr. Gurupdev Singh. And he says that usually we understand craft and art are different. In your case, they seem to merge. Is it a triumph of craft over art or the other way around?
Without craft, there is no art.
Okay.
It is like saying for a cricket, I'll use a cricket analogy. It is like saying everyone needs a good footwork. Some may not need. Some T20 players are there, but mostly everyone needs a good footwork. But just good footwork doesn't make you a great cricketer. But craft everyone needs. Art is using that craft to take it to a different level. There is no art without craft.
Okay, thank you. You seem to be very a huge fan of cricket. You use quite a lot of cricket similes and analogies.
No, it is just I used to be. Now I don't
You
watch
used
it.
Okay. Thank you so much. The next question is from Rakhi Day. And she says there are so many characters in the story. How easy or difficult was it to weave all these characters into larger canvas or fabric as anti-heroes or protagonists?
See, writing, I believe, is like gardening. There are different kind of methods. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but my thing, it is like gardening. I just put the seeds of characters. I
Okay.
create characters and allow it to grow by its own way. Here and there, I may prune it a bit, but it is more like a garden than like a constructed site. So I have sown a lot of seeds of characters, and they have come to fruition at their own pace. The characters lead the plot. I don't plot it. I don't plot the story.
Thank you. And she has another question in the same question. As anti-heroes are protagonists in your stories, how much liberty did you give yourself to write their narratives?
I have not given much narratives. I have not given much freedom in the sense that most of the things I have written find a place in some folktale or other. I used a very imaginative visual language to tell it. But all these stories, there are more than 300 Ramayanas, there are more than 1100 Mahabharatas. Everything you can imagine, it is there in one version or other of the Mahabharata. As I said, Jaimini Mahabharata, of which Ashwatthama Parva only we have got, Duryodhana is the hero. So it is not something new which I had done. Only thing new I had done was I wrote it in English, in my own Indian English. Other than that, these are all part of the great storytelling tradition of our country.
Thank you. And Shiraz Mukherjee is asking if you use a screenwriting software, and if yes, which one?
I use a screen because if you are a professional writer, there is no, you cannot escape using a screenwriting software. There is a standardization. I use Final Draft 11 for screenwriting. That is a screenwriting software across the world. The standard. You have got Celtex and other things, but Final Draft 11 in professional level, Final Draft 11 is the only one you can possibly use. And for writing novels, I use Scrivener. For plotting, I use that.
Thank you.
I am a technology buff. I use all sort of technology possible, whatever is available to write.
That's wonderful. And someone called Blues is asking what is the name of your next Bahubali book?
Queen of Mahishmathi. Queen of Mahishmathi.
Queen of Mahishmathi. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And okay, someone has not, I believe, watched Bahubali because someone is asking, why did Katappa go kill Bahubali?
I suggest them to watch the film and then also read my book.
I know, I know. So these are all the questions that we had from our audience, but I also have a question for you before we sign off. How different is writing a book as a book and from writing a screenplay for Netflix or so?
Screenplay is not a final product.
Okay.
Screenplay is a very condensed art. Screenplay is a guide to others in the industry. Book is a final product. Between book, in the writer and the reader only is there. It directly tells the story. Book is like telepathy. I am just giving you the story. I am creating a visual in your mind through my book. So I am the director. I have to make you hear the music. I have to give you the edited condensed version. I have to play the scene in you. I have to give the tone to the character. Whereas screenplay, all this work is done by various professionals. So an editor will be working, a stunt director will be working, the actor will play their role. So screenplay is a guide. So a 2-hour film will have a 120 page or 125 page of final draft as a screenplay. Maximum, sometimes in Indian context, maybe only 90 pages because we tend to elaborate scenes. So 2.5 hour film is around 100 pages. That's all. Whereas a novel will span 300, 400 pages. So these are two different arts.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't think we have any other questions.
No, Sanjoy is there. He says
Okay.
he had asked a question. Maybe he can come there now and ask if he'd like to. Sanjoy, are you still here?
Let me see.
Has he logged in with his own name?
Sanjay was there, but then.
Yeah, he just asked.
Yeah. I'm just unmuting Sanjay.
Yeah.
Sanjay, please unmute yourself. I have unmuted you.
Yeah,
okay.
hi. Yeah.
You can turn on your camera also.
I've just come back from a jog, so it's very sweaty. Sorry to have missed Mr. Neelakantan's most of your thing, but I have a very simple question: is who do you write for? You write for yourself? You write for your publisher? Who's your audience? I mean, primarily, as a non-fiction writer, I
I write for
primarily for myself. I mean, I have to be
I write
satisfied
for
with that.
I write for my readers. If I'm writing for myself, I can write a journal and keep it at home. So I write for the writer. I am like a performer. The performer, an actor, he acts. Some part of yourself will be there. You will write for your satisfaction because you cannot satisfy all the readers. But as I said, no, my writing, you might have missed that. My writing is very folkish. I draw a lot from folk. If you see the folk artists, how they sing for themselves. But every moment they are taking feedback from the audience. One more small point I would like to make. Now, how we are arranging the stage itself is wrong, or it's not un-Indian. Why? Let me tell you. Usually, Indian folk artists or Indian performing art, the audience also will be lighted. Why? Because there is something called manodharma in all Indian art. Everything you are doing as per your manodharma, and how do you get that? You get the feedback from the audience. The Western way, how we are setting the stage now is, audience is in dark. You don't get any feedback. When you are performing a play.
But I think a lot of us who are non-fiction writers also get a lot of stuff from all the work, all the traveling that we do, all the conversations we have. So I write ultimately from one's own satisfaction. You have to be satisfied with what you write, ultimately. You are the test, you're competing against yourself. But there is an audience out there which will judge it. That's a separate thing. But I don't want to get into that. That's a style.
I will never get satisfied with my writing, sir. The only place I stop it, because I keep editing the work. I will never be satisfied. If I get my Asura after 8 years, I'll be editing it again. So the only thing which stops me is the deadline. So if today is the deadline, if the publisher says, or my newspaper where I write the column says, today is the deadline, what I am giving is my version of the story on this particular time. If they ask you, if they say the deadline is next Wednesday, what I will be giving is the next Wednesday's version of the story. It may be better, it may be worse, because you can overwrite yourself and kill it. But I am never satisfied with my writing, and I should never be. As I said, the moment you are contented, that's what I believe, you are dead. Discontentment is what is driving the civilization and ourselves. That is Asura Marga for you. The way of Ravan.
Yeah.
So Gupta, if you allow me, I wish to say something.
Chamak sir, we have just one more question, and I believe
go ahead.
we are so engrossed with this discussion, and the questions are just popping up.
Yeah.
And it's again from Dr. Gurupdesh, and he's asking about your intentions and plans to go beyond the mythologicals in your future writing.
Actually, I have gone beyond mythological thing. In Netflix, if you see, there is a show called Sarfarosh, the Battle of Saragadi, where 21 Sikh soldiers had fought almost 12,000 Afghans. So I had, it is available in Netflix. So I was part of the team. I set up the entire show. So that was beyond mythology. And I had even written, many people don't know, I had even written some episodes of Adalat of all things. But in books, now the foray into the children's book also is a new thing which I had done. As I said, I started writing satirical, political satires in Malayalam. And I started as a cartoonist. So maybe if the publishers allow, I might come up with this kind of stories. I'm coming up with a thriller soon.
Oh, excellent.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Chamak Sahib, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, let me congratulate the team Majha House for bringing such a beautiful session to this, this wonderful audience. Mr. Anand, this session was truly an eye-opener for me. I am also, putting my legs into writing. And today, I've learned something which I haven't learned in the last 50 years from this session. That yes, writing is also an art in which you have the boundaries, and this is something which I could never imagine. Honestly, telling you from the core of my heart, this session has given me another life to from today onwards. I would say that another birth. So I would be, having a different perspective from today, this moment, and I don't have words. But at any point of time in your life, while watching your, show, have you ever felt that no, what I am portraying is not right as an audience? Now, I'm not talking to Mr. Anand as a writer, I'm talking to Mr. Anand as an audience. When you watch your shows, when you watch your, writing a character, making a story, giving it to the director, getting it produced and done artistically by the artist, have you ever seen that, no, this should not have been portrayed like that?
Every time, every scene.
This is again a diplomatic answer.
It's not a diplomatic answer. See, sometimes you feel proud about what you have written. As I said, screenplay and novel are two different things. Short story, I write poetry in Malayalam. These are all different things. Poetry pays the least, and 3 people will read it if you keep a gun on their head. So, so these are different arts. Screenplay, you visualize it. You don't have a budget when you visualize it, right? When you're writing screenplay, I can imagine 10 lakh Kalagayas are attacking Mahishmathi, the film. The moment you take it, the producer will start crying. Where will you bring all these things? You don't have budget. So what happens? Every screenplay will become a compromise because it is catering to budgetary constraint, time constraint, taste constraint, and the definition of arts constraint. So when you watch anything what you have written as a screenplay, you will always feel, no, this is not the way to do it. But if they make the writer the director also, he will not be satisfied, because a lot of my writer friends are directors, because even then you are constrained. So every art is a constraint. Only place you cannot be constrained is when you write a journal, because you are not showing anyone. So pour your heart out in your diary and journal. The moment you show it even to your wife or your children, already the constraints have entered there. Then you start writing for them. Honestly, you will start writing for others.
Thank you.
So every scene.
I had something, but I'll ask you offline.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to that, online publicly. But then there is a question in my mind. Probably Amitabh tried to touch it, but I'll ask you offline, and I'll request Amitabh and I'll request Preeti ji to give me that connection with Mr. Anand.
You can
yes, sure, yes.
You can talk to me. I can give you my number also. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Preeti,
is that all, Guru Pratap? Questions, I think, are we done?
There is no question. Since Anand was talking about the Saragadi thing that he wrote, someone who is very good with GK has written back, incidentally, today is the anniversary battle of Saragadi. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one final 2 paisa bit. Anand, on page 106, it says, how did the values of Kadari Mandalam suddenly turn so fertile? I think it means Mahishmathi.
It's Mahishmathi. Might be an editing mistake.
Yeah. Chalo, at least I understood it correctly.
Thank you.
For the next edition, you must get it corrected.
Yes, sir.
Badhiya. Thank you very much. I am very happy. I have been quite fulfilled. I was rather nervous. I told Preeti, kahan yaar mere ko basa rahe ho? I am not a conversationalist. What will I say? But
no, I think it's been great, and both of you have been really wonderful. So I'd really like to thank you. Riveting and very honest, I think, discussion. And I think any aspiring writers or even published writers who are here would have got a lot of points from this conversation. And I enjoyed listening to you, Anand. I think so many points that, one can actually stretch into another discussion altogether. And I love this idea of you going to so many temples and listening to the same story and so many versions of the same story. So this whole thing of storytelling, the way the story mutates and changes and acquires new meanings and new layers. It's fascinating to see that, and I think all of that came across to us today in this discussion. Amitabh, thank you so much, because I think you actually managed to get a lot of stuff out for us to listen to, apart from the fact of course, the highly successful franchise, the books, this whole mythological world that we heard about, but also more enduring questions about where are we headed, the kind of republic that we are becoming. The fact that that one sentence you said about Ravan being discontented, and how you need discontent for a civilization to grow. So for me, there were lots of other little bits and pieces which make you think a lot, and that is the best thing that one can get out of a conversation.
Thank you.
So thank you very, very much, everybody. And thank you, of course, to the Majha House team. Big tally for us all, I think. Next Saturday, let me tell you a little bit about the next program.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Absolutely.
Yes, of course. That is the whole idea. We must buy the book, get everybody to buy the book. Next Saturday, that's the 19th, we have a session with the two poets. There's Sudeep Sen and Anamika. And the session will be moderated by Malashri Lal. And then on that following Sunday, the 20th, is Sanja Punjab, where we're talking about art and museums from both sides of the border. So we have Alka Pandey from our side, and we have Humaira Alam from who's been the ex-director of the Lahore Museum. Interesting stuff is going to come up, so please be here. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you, Anand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.